Good morning, everyone. Gustavo, thank you for taking us all through this great data, and thank you for taking over the kind of importance of data. And it's something that makes me very happy because today we're not talking about data. Data is extremely important in the F&B industry, and we perfectly agree that more decisions need to be taken with data. However, we've also heard a lot about how difficult this industry is, how challenging it is, and how so many people fail or succeed. And we're looking to kind of understand why. And the why is one very important thing, is you need to love the industry to be able to work in it and to be able to survive it. I've worked in Michelin-style kitchens for 6 years. Nobody goes back into that kitchen unless, well, they're crazy or they love it. And love is one of the points that we really see the market making a difference. So for food halls, it's a trend that has been around for a bit. We highlighted it as an upcoming trend in Saudi Arabia a few years ago. But how do we deliver it? What is it? Why is it working? Why is it successful? And how is it being delivered? So we're going to start by what is a food hall. And interestingly enough, the team and I were looking for inspiration on writing kind of a definition of what a food hall is. So we kind of turned into the newest member of the team in order to get the answer. That team member is called ChatGPT, which actually came up with an incredibly good definition. So a modern food hall is a large open concept with a variety of artisans serving specialty food. So we already see that, we're talking about artisans, we're talking about specialty food. Then it's high quality food options in a diverse and dynamic culinary experience. So we start seeing that it's not a traditional food court, it's not just a delivery of a product, it really is the delivery of an experience. It has communal seating, and that creates a social environment, which is very often complemented by entertainment and events. And I think for Saudi Arabia, the last point is the most important one. It creates a destination for food lovers. I think we all agree that in Saudi Arabia, food lovers are more than enough. But it also creates a launchpad for new and emerging chefs and food entrepreneurs. And I think this is why food halls will make a huge difference in this market. We talked about the different areas, the different cultures, the different specialty of cuisines. So let's go through 4 kind of the more traditional types of food halls. We have the street food market, very popular in Europe and the US. It's usually quite temporary. It comes in and comes out on a weekly basis, monthly basis. It creates a happening, and usually more successful in a high footfall destination. The contemporary food hall, I think that's what kind of really brought food halls back into everybody's mind. Time Out Market in Lisbon is probably the best example. It's a curated tenant mix that creates a social space and with a unified brand managing shared spaces. It's centrally managed, and it overall creates one destination with multiple sub-experts within it. The gourmet food halls with Italy or Depa Chica, which was mentioned earlier, is a great example, Harrods being one of the oldest ones. It's a great example of kind of creating repeat visitation from the local community and creating a mix of eat-in and take-away food with or without subleased tenants, usually a little bit more higher priced, and really creates an appeal for the residents. The traditional market is where you find the old produce markets being redeveloped in order to be more public-facing, in order to be more inviting to the public and create a historical importance for tourists and residents alike to visit. So why are they successful? And I think, drawing back on all the presentations that were done today, we see some very strong trends on why food and beverage is important, and more importantly, why is it important in Saudi Arabia? The social aspect of things, the young population, the reasons to try and leave the house. We work from home, we can eat at home with delivery, we can retail shop at home. We don't really have reasons to leave. And the youngest populations are actually the best connected, but also the ones that are saying they feel the most lonely. So the food is the first aspect. It's not your packaged, traditional, international, branded food. It's made with love, it's local ingredients, it's prepared on the spot, and it's different. It highlights the city, it highlights the country, it highlights the chef preparing it. So very important to acknowledge the difference of the food from a food court, a food hall, or a normal restaurant. Then we have the positioning. So here we've mapped out the 10 F&B categories we use. So we're going all the way from impulse, ready-to-eat, fast food, all the way to fine dining. We've plotted them across average spend and the destination or dwell time associated with it. The more expensive a restaurant is, the further away you're expected to drive, or you will drive to get to it. And as it gets a little bit cheaper, you spend less time in it, and it's less destination. So as you can see, of course, we've created that gap in fast food, fast casual, and all-day dining, but there's also, there was a piece missing, a piece that, it's affordable, it's engaging, it's social, but it's also at a relatively well-priced. So in terms of the positioning, Jennifer showed the statistics earlier. We're looking at the younger generations. 85% of the 18 to 25-year-olds will eat out 2 to 3 times a week or more. 26 to 30-year-olds, that's at 65%. 31 to 35-year-olds, it's at 64%. When we look at the total spend per month, the younger generations, 18 to 25, spend almost as much as the older generation, 45 to 65. However, the average spend is completely different. So the young people have multiple spend occasions, however, at a lower average spend. 45 and above, they have a higher average spend, but less occasions. In total, the difference is not very big. So with an increasingly young population, at 60% under the age of 30, food halls actually make a lot more sense than fine dining. Don't get me wrong, fine dining is incredibly important and incredibly interesting, but let's not forget the more social and affordable aspects of food and beverage. The design, so that's the biggest difference between a food court and a food hall after the food. So the design needs to be inviting, it needs to create a happening, it needs to create a social environment, and it needs to keep the guest in-house. So no more half-an-hour chairs that become uncomfortable. We need environments that people want to spend time within it. So overall, we looked at a bunch of food halls, contemporary, gourmet, street food, and traditional. We find an overall average of about 2,250 square meters per space. And in general, we don't advise anything above 3,000 because then it becomes too vast. It's difficult to manage. It's difficult to create an environment that's inviting. 10 to 15 kiosks is usually an average, a quite healthy average. We wouldn't advise anything less than 5 because then you don't have the critical mass. Seating, and that's a mistake we see over and over again, do not go lower than 40 seats per kiosk. The reason for that is you may have 400 kiosks. If people cannot buy and sit down and eat, they can generate revenue. So even though the shared seating areas is not technically revenue generating, that's the enabler that creates the revenue generation. So contemporary food halls are about 2,000 square meters on average. Gourmet food halls are a little bit bigger. There's more storage space, back of house space needed. Street food markets, a bit small, but it's a street food kiosk. There is no storage space. It really is just come in, deliver, sell out all your food and come out. Then on the traditional food markets, it's a little bit all over the place. We show an average of 3,000. However, it really depends. I think Saudi Arabia has an opportunity on the traditional food markets because of the tradition in produce, because of the specificities of produce, depending on the region. And there is old buildings that are really looking for love and to be put back into perspective. So here we're going to get into the why most restaurateurs fail when they haven't done it before. I've been to restaurants, it's easy, I know good food, I can do it. It really doesn't work that way. So food halls, we see 4 operating models. The easiest one is the self-operated by the landlord. The landlord takes on the challenge, Unfortunately, no offense to any landlords, it's not done as well because it's not the primary use of business. So the landlord takes on managing the tenants, bringing in new tenants. They do need to turn around in short leases, 9 to 18 months on average. It creates a lot of work. We've seen some bring in leasing specialists in order to help the turnover. And then it's also managing all the table clearing, all the centralized offices. So in a nutshell, it has the maximum control, it has the maximum return, and I'm going to paraphrase here, it has the maximum headache in terms of operations. Then we have the third-party lease or agreement. This is what most of our landlords want. This is what most of our clients want. You're going to struggle finding a food hall operator that's going to take a head lease for 2,500 square meters. It's too much risk, and it requires too much investment. For the landlord, it does have minimum control, minimum returns, and a minimum headache because it's completely outsourced. However, it's very difficult to find people who would take that on. Also, as a landlord, you kind of want to keep a little bit of control because if it's not delivering the experience you want to deliver, there's nothing you can do until the lease is over. So now we're getting into the fun stuff. So we have the joint venture and management agreement. The joint venture is the hardest one to set up. It's lengthy, it's costly. However, it kind of takes on the best of both worlds. The landlord puts in the space, potentially some investment, and then there's a food hall operator that comes in and puts the expertise. These two parties create a joint venture that then takes on the challenge of delivering the food hall to the best of their abilities. Lastly, the management agreement. It's a little bit like a joint venture. Legally, it's somewhat different. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how. I don't know, I do food. But again, the landlord and the food hall operator come into a sort of agreement. The landlord takes on some responsibilities. Usually works well because the landlord can capitalize on the existing shared services, cleaning, maintenance, etc. And then the food hall operator delivers a great experience. Thank you very much. And we do have a minute and a half, 2 minutes for questions, so please.
Do raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Okay, we've got one here.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. The question is the food hall should be a destination in its own, or should it be part of a bigger complex or bigger activation, or something that you want to activate, you want to draw footfall to, or you want to have excitement about it, so you have a food hall part of your activation? Or should you invest on it to be a destination in its own?
So it's a great question because it's a difficult one to answer. So a food hall, as a food hall, should be a destination. Now the big question is, can it work as a destination within a larger development or not? In general and on principle, yes, it can. Traditionally in Europe and the US, we've seen most of them come up on standalone destinations, especially the ones that took older buildings to be redeveloped. But if it's done properly, the food hall, let's take a shopping center, for example. A food hall can deliver the need for that more social, fast casual space. Now, a traditional shopping center will get, especially in Saudi Arabia, most of its footfall towards the afternoon and evening. If you can activate a food hall early on in the morning, it actually starts making more sense and it starts being alive earlier. So if your development has footfall expected early on, so office space, residential, close to potentially a school, yes, it can work very, very well. It can also work from mid-afternoon to evening, but then you start limiting your revenue generating hours.
Great. Thank you so much. Big round of applause to Alexis.